Hi, I'm Ariane, and these are all the books I read in the first half of February. Now, today is February 15th in the evening, night. It's around 8:30. So the first book I read was Girl Overboard, which was for Books and Law's Buzzwordathon challenge, which in February was to have a word to do with water in the title. And the only one I could find on my TBR was Girl Overboard, which does not actually have to do with water. It's about snowboarding. It was the closest I could get. It's by Justina Chen. I read one book her before, a few years ago, called Nothing But the Truth and a Few White Lies, more than a few years ago actually, in high school I think, and I really liked it, and I really liked Girl Overboard too. Now, look, I don't know what it is about Justina Chen's writing, but she gets me every time. Like, is it technically that good? No, it's not bad. It's alright, but it's not amazing. And there are definitely, like, contrived things that happen. Like, nobody's gonna get over a lifetime of pain that fast. But she gets me every time, and I love it. The second book I read in February, I actually have right here with me. It is Batman, which is a novelization of the 1989 Batman movie by Craig Shaw Gardner. Is this book good? No. The writing's not good. But is it fun? 100%. I really enjoyed watching this book. I also, after reading it, I actually watched the Lego Batman movie, which I'd tried twice, and for different reasons I never finished it. It was less good than I'd hoped. But this one was really fun. I actually really enjoy that this wasn't written from Batman's perspective. It's written mostly from Vicky Vale, who is this... I've never watched a 1989 movie, by the way. The only Batman movie I've ever watched is the Lego Batman movie, which I watched after reading this book. But it's written from the perspective of Vicky Vale, which is this reporter who falls in love with Batman, and he falls in love with her. And I just thought it was very interesting to write the book from that perspective. And I thought it actually did make the book better than being in Batman's head, just because, like, already by 1989, everybody's going to watch this movie or read this book, knows Batman's story. But obviously Vicky Vale doesn't. So it's very interesting to, like, be in a new... It's fresh. It's new to be... You're not in the same old perspective. You're in a new perspective, which is fun. The third book I read in February was Love Boat Forever by Abigail Hingwen. This is the third book in a trilogy, but I actually didn't read the second book, and they don't have to be read in order. I read the first book in January. It's called Love Boat Taipei, and this is basically... Love Boat is a real thing. It's a sort of birthright-like program for young Chinese Americans to come to Taiwan and explore their heritage. I did think Love Boat Forever was actually a lot better than Love Boat Taipei, which was just okay. I'm still not a big fan of the romance in Love Boat Forever, but I thought it was done much better. And I found it interesting. It wasn't my favorite book, but I'm glad I read it. The fourth book I read in February was The Burning Maze by Rick Riordan. It's actually a reread, and so I started The Trials of Apollo when they started coming out, and I got to The Burning Maze. That was the last one I read, and then when the next book came out, which I don't actually remember the name right now, it was on hold for so long in the library that by the time I got to it, I didn't remember what happened in The Burning Maze. It had been a long time. It had probably been a year and a half at that point. And The Burning Maze was obviously on hold for really long, and I just gave up on it. But now there's no hold. There's no wait. Listening to the audiobooks, which are really fun. And I think I actually enjoyed it this time better than the first time around, probably because I had the plot of the second book better in my head. The fifth book I read in February was Seeds of Hope, the Gold Rush Diary of Susanna Fairchild by Christy Anna Gregory, which is a Dear America book, which are a series of diaries written by girls living in different times of American history. I love all the Dear America books. This one was no different. It wasn't my favorite, only because it had so much material to work with. There was so much going on during the gold rush that it was just a little crazy. We got to talk about the racism. Oh, now we're talking about the fact that there's basically no law here. But I think it was well written, and I really liked it. I really like all the Dear America books. The sixth book I read in February, I also have right here, is the first Land of Stories book, The Wishing Spell by Chris Colfer. I actually started this one in 2015, so 10 years ago, and soft DNF'd it, and never got back to it until now. But I did. I don't really know what I feel about this book right now. I literally finished it today. On one hand, I hate the moral. First of all, I hate that there's a clear moral in this book anyways. But secondly, I hate the moral. Literally, it says, the moral is that the villains are just villainized by their circumstance. And no, they're not. The evil queen may have had bad background in this book, but she decided to go and do evil stuff. She wasn't villainized by her circumstances. Bad things happen to lots of people. Bad things happened to Snow White. She didn't turn evil. She didn't go and do evil stuff. But I did enjoy, that it's just, I'm so used to reading books that, oh, but look, unicorns are actually evil, stuff like that. That the fact that this book was just, straight up the fairy tales, what you'd expect, was super surprising to me. It does make sense for its age range. It's pretty long for a book aimed at 4th graders, 438 pages, but I'd say it's definitely more aimed at that age range, even though the length of it, you would think it's aimed a little higher. But I did enjoy that it was pretty straightforward and just yeah, this is fairy tale stuff. So I had fun reading it. I think I'm going to read the next book, so I might listen to them in audiobook. That sounds a little funner, because it's so simple. But I really, really, really hate the moral, besides hating the fact that there's even a moral there at all. And the last book I've read so far in February is Prometheus Bound, which I also read today. I read all of it today. It's very short. It's a play by Aeschylus. This one is translated by David Green. So Prometheus Bound is basically the first play in a trilogy, except we don't have the other two trilogies, so I didn't really start a new series, so it's nice. And it's basically the first day of Prometheus being bound to this rock. A little bit different than what happens in Percy Jackson, but so that was actually kind of cool, oh, this is different than what I remember reading about. But I didn't really love it. So basically the play goes, Prometheus is bound to the rock by Hephaestus, who doesn't want to do it, but is being forced to. Then the daughters of the Titan Okeanos come and are oh, this is so sad for you, Prometheus, but you know what, you deserve it. But this is so sad for you, but you know what, you deserve it. And then Okeanos comes and is Prometheus, you don't really deserve it, but I can't say that out loud because Zeus can hear me, but you should learn to just go along with what Zeus says, because otherwise you're going to get punished worse. And Prometheus is hell no, bro. And then, and this is where stuff gets weird, this woman named Io, who was punished by Hera for Zeus falling in love with her, normal stuff, comes along, and Prometheus basically just tells her whole history, and also the future, what's going to happen to her, because Prometheus is the Titan of forethought, so he knows everything that's happened and will happen. And I thought that was just kind of random. I really liked Io. She had a lot of good lines, but it just, why was it there? It didn't really seemed to really like fit in with with the rest of the play. It was like there are two parts of the play. Like one is everybody like reacting to Prometheus's punishment, and then the next is just this Io character getting told her history and future, and her children's future. It felt weird. I also thought Prometheus was a bit boring. Like, come on, this guy defies the Titans, then even though he is a Titan, then he defies the gods, he knows everything that's happened, everything that will happen, and I guess that's what makes him boring, because, like, he doesn't really, like, it feels like he almost isn't making a choice, like, he already knows what's gonna happen, so everybody's coming to him and saying, making different choices, Prometheus, and he's like, no, I already know what's gonna happen, like, yeah, that's kind of boring, but, so yeah, it wasn't my favorite. Sorry, Aeschylus. That's everything I've read so far in February.